Welcome to the Polonium Webinar. It's a series of webinars which can bring you closer to academic career opportunities in Poland and beyond. And today we are delighted to co-host a webinar with NCN about POLONEZ BIS post program. Who we are Polonium Foundation, which brings together Polish scientific diaspora in Poland and abroad, and any researcher or person connected with academia and interested in academic relationships with Poland. So we are delighted to host you here. And I hope all of you are also aware about our Polonium network, which is a database of Polish scientists and scientists interested with collaboration in Poland. Yes, so with that, I would like to pass on the stage to our collaborators.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Karolina. Thanks to Polonium Foundation for having us here today. I would like to also welcome everybody who's present on behalf of the National Science Center. As most of you probably know, the National Science Center is a public research funding institution focusing on funding fundamental research, basic research. And POLONEZ BIS is our new program that is generously supported by the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions within the Horizon 2020 framework program of the European Union. However, the main funder of the whole initiative is the National Science Center in Poland. We will have a pleasure to invite through this program 120 experienced scientists, experienced researchers to come to Polish research institutions and conduct the research here for 2 years. My name is Justyna Woźniakowska. I'm the head of the International Cooperation Department at the National Science Center, and I had a true pleasure to observe the development of POLONEZ programs with great satisfaction in our institution from 2015, because as some of you again may know, POLONEZ BIS is not the first program of that kind, not the first mobility program supported by Marie Curie. Its predecessor was a POLONEZ program, which only finished this year, through which 109 researchers came to various research institutions in Poland, and we were very happy with the results of this first initiative. So we decided that it's absolutely necessary and will be beneficial to the research community to have a continuation of that, which is exactly POLONEZ BIS. The first POLONEZ BIS call was launched less than a month ago, and it will be still open until mid-December, and there's 2 more calls to follow next year. So we of course invite you and we encourage you very warmly to submit your applications to these calls. My colleague Jolanta Palowska, who coordinates the whole initiative, will tell you more in a minute about the fundamental objectives of this program, the elements it's composed of, the eligibility requirements, formal regulations, and the like. And her presentation will be followed by a presentation of Aleksander Grabiec from the Jagiellonian University. I'm very happy that he's with us here today because he's able to share his experiences from being a fellow in the first POLONEZ program that I have spoken about just a moment ago. So, he will tell exactly what it feels like to be a POLONEZ and Marie Skłodowska-Curie fellow. Then finally, Dr. Małgorzata Zawiślak from the National Science Center will tell you more about the proposal evaluation process, what you need to make sure is in your proposal to have it well evaluated to be successful in our POLONEZ BIS calls. And of course, later on, we will invite you for questions, to submit questions, and we will try to answer your questions as well as we can. And of course, if we can't do it at this stage, we will be open for your questions later on, and please contact us anytime. So I will give the floor now to Jolanta Palowska, and Jola, please take the floor. Thanks.
Thank you, Justyna. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I know that most of you probably came here because in the information webinar for applicants, you usually have an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. But we are going to start in a rather unconventional way, because as you can see in the agenda, I have a question for you. And this question is, are you ready for a change? And well, I don't know if I'm a very optimistic person. Justyna will laugh at that, but I'm pretty optimistic about this gathering, because if you are here, and there's 47 people here now, I can be almost sure that even if you are perhaps not ready yet, you are definitely considering a change. And if you are considering a change in your professional lives, then this is the very best place to be, because POLONEZ BIS is a program that has a great potential to introduce that change into your lives, your professional lives, but also into your personal lives. Now, why is that? First of all, because it is an individual-centered program. Usually when you apply for grants, it's the host institution that is the most important. In this project, it's you who are important. Because this project looks for talent, it looks for experience, which is unlimited by age, nationality, gender, or even career stage. This project also centers on your curiosity for finding out new things about life as we know it, reality as we know it, and other things as we probably don't know. So we found basic research in any of the disciplines described by 25 NCN thematic panels, and the choice is completely up to you. So again, there's a great potential for change, because basically we're listening to you and we'll fund what you tell us is really good to be funded. The third aspect of the program is that we are asking you to get on the move, and we're asking you to do that quite literally. We're asking you to pack your life and move to Poland for 24 months. And we do that because we believe that if you go into a new environment and get integrated with the new environment, this is, okay, a challenge, but it is also a great opportunity for knowledge transfer. So the change is brought about by what you bring to the new institution, but also by what you can learn from the institution where you decide to spend the next 2 years. We also think that a great potential for change with the POLONEZ BIS problem is also nested in the fact that this program gives you financial independence. Most fellowships will only fund your employment contract, pay the money directly to the principal investigator. Well, we do that, but not only that, we also fund a research grant. Finally, this program is about team building and capacity building. This program is about letting you work with a mentor, allowing you to hire a new research team, or if you so choose, to cooperate with the investigators already employed by the host institution. This is about capacity building, because this program lets you combine research with training in transferable skills and also with intersectoral secondment. So it is quite a comprehensive offer. And even if you are in a position now where some of these aspects are already well taken off, I am sure that you can also find a place where there is an opportunity to change. So we really would like to encourage you to take this opportunity and join us in Poland for POLONEZ BIS. And if this persuaded you even a little bit, then I have good news for you. We are recruiting. As Justyna mentioned, we opened the first call for proposals. Our recruitment is a little bit different from typical recruitments because we do not recruit for positions open at the National Science Center. We recruit you for research positions in different Polish host institutions. So as was already said, we are planning 3 calls for proposals. All of them will employ transparent procedures, objective assessment criteria, and international peer review panels. You will hear a little bit more about that in the 3rd part of this meeting from Małgorzata. We are looking for 120 excellent researchers, holders of PhD, or perhaps people with at least 4 years of full-time equivalent research experience. And if they are successful with their proposals, we will place them at the Polish host institutions that they themselves have chosen for 24-month fellowships. And those institutions can be both academic and non-academic, whichever place fits best the research proposal that you have in mind. There will be 3 calls. The dates are outlined here. The present call is open till mid-December, and the funding decisions will be issued early in June. So time to grant from closing the call is only 6 months. And we hope that most of the funded projects will start in September or October next year. I said at the beginning that Polonez BIS is a good offer for individual researchers. It is individual centered, but we are not going to leave you alone. We will give you support throughout your funding term, and we are going to start in November and December, where all the people recruited in this first call will be invited here to Kraków for a kickoff meeting, which will give you an opportunity for networking, already combined with the career development training for principal investigators and mentors. And good news, we will organize it and pay for it ourselves from our budget, so you will not have to pay anything for that. Now, because we are recruiting for jobs, then quite obviously there's going to be a lot of documents involved, as usually with job recruitment. And when you think about typical job recruitments, they usually come in phases, right? So there is a documentary phase 1, you provide your CV, then somebody meets with you and they talk with you, and then they're invited again and again and again. And especially in corporate recruitments, this can take forever. Now, we do it differently. We ask you to write one very comprehensive proposal. It comes in different parts, and then we use those different parts at different stages of evaluation, but you have to write it only once, okay? And in fact, in this recruitment, you write your own job description. And because we are recruiting for positions in research, then quite obviously, at the very core of that proposal is your idea for research. So the first question you have to ask yourselves is, what will your research be about and why? What do you want to accomplish science-wise? So the first answer, very short answer, is the choice of your NCN panel, the thematic range for your project. But then we also ask you to provide a short and detailed project description. And I think Małgorzata will tell you why 2 are needed. So we're going to keep it a secret at this point. We also ask you to think about the ethical dimension of your research, because research integrity and values are very important for us at the National Science Center. I have a technical remark here. Not only the recording of the session will be available, but also this presentation, and you will notice that some of the words here are actually active links, so I will not be clicking them during the presentation, but when you get it, you'll be able to click them and go to all those places, and I'll be discussing. Back to the proposal. The second element that is always very important in any recruitment is the place where you tell us about yourselves, right? So in the Polonez BIS proposal, there are places where you tell the reviewers about who you are and about your career so far. So there are a couple of documents that check your eligibility for the call. There are other places where we ask you about career breaks, and we ask you about career breaks because we don't want them to negatively influence what we see in the academic track record. So yes, we are going to ask you about your publications, about conferences, about your scientific achievements. But we will give you, we'll extend the time for which you report those achievements if there were any career breaks. So this is also incorporated in the proposal. In other words, if you had career breaks, be it because of family matters or perhaps long-term illnesses, don't worry, Polonez BIS can incorporate this and still allow you to be eligible and still allow you to grow professionally within the program. The third important element of the proposal is the description of the hosting arrangements. And again, most often when you think about recruitment, it's a researcher going through different job adverts and looking at companies that are looking for researchers, for new employees. Here in Polonez BIS, we are letting you choose your own host institution. But it is important that this host institution is well matched with who you already are and who you want to be due to Polonez BIS, and also well matched with the research that you're proposing. And because we want to be able to give everybody a fair try, we have prepared the host institution capacity form, which is basically a kind of short survey for host institutions when every host institution co-applying with you in this call will answer the same 12 questions. So it will be easier to objectively compare what those institutions have to offer. Now, because Polonez BIS is about a comprehensive growth, so it is not only the research that interests us in this program, it's also about developing different areas of your professional career. Now, as with any growth, any plan for development, it's good to start with analyzing the skills that you are already good at. So again, we have prepared another part of the proposal, which we call career development plan, and it starts with a short survey of different skills. Okay, so and what we would like you to do there is to ask yourselves what you're good at, what would you like to keep doing, but also to identify areas for development. And based on that analysis, we would then like you to set your research-related goals, plan intersectoral secondments and dissemination of research results. But we also want you to think beyond the project, because Polonez BIS is a great opportunity, but it only lasts 24 months. So we're asking you to go beyond that, to maximize the impact of the project, but also to think long-term. So what you're going to do next. So that's what happens in the career development plan. And last but not least, we want you to look at all these things. So your research, what your host institution can give you, how you are going to develop, where you want to go, how you want to disseminate your results, conferences, courses that you need to attend. And we ask you to estimate the necessary resources and costs. In other words, we ask you to plan your own project budget. And the good news here is that if the reviewers like your proposal if it is an excellent research idea and you can demonstrate that you have the capacities to carry it out, and that the project will have impact not only on the development of the scientific discipline, but also on your professional career, then we agree to the budget you proposed. And we will not cut your budget. We will accept it as it's given. Some reservations might be issued if there are any ineligible costs, but that's a side matter. We will not cut the project budget that you give us. And since we have got to the question of money, let's look at the project budget. I will show you what the maximum project budget can be. And in a minute, I'll explain why it is not always going to be the maximum. Now, the maximum possible budget in euros over 250,000, which converted to Polish currency is over a million Polish zloty. We are using for all lump sums, for all caps that are given in the project, we use the exchange rate that is given here. This is what the maximum project budget is composed of. We're first going to look at the pie on the left. And the pie on the left is composed of 3 big slices. Now there's a blue slice, and this is your salary as a principal investigator. By the way, anytime in the documents, call documents, or in this presentation, when we are talking about salaries, we're always looking at the total cost of salary. So we're looking at salary before taxes. If you are interested on how much this will be in Polish currency net, please go to the guide for applicants, where we have prepared an approximation of those values for you. So I'll not go into those details now. The amounts you see here are calculated for the 24 months grant, okay? So this is the total that's available to you. So as you can see, almost 120 euros maximum for the salary of the PI. And this again is broken down into 4 components. The living and mobility allowance are the 2 major components that all PIs are going to receive. The living allowance is paid by the European Commission. The mobility allowance is an extra element that you get from the National Science Center to compensate all the extra costs that might be involved in your moving from the country where you are now to Poland. There are 2 more elements, family allowance and special needs allowance, and you may be eligible to claim those, but not all applicants may be eligible. So to claim family allowance, you declare in the proposal that your family, understood as your partner, spouse, or children, will come to Poland with you and will move here for at least 3 months. Okay, so if you indicate that this is your plan, then the proposal will automatically add family allowance to your salary. If you think you need allowance for special needs, again, I will not go into details. This is explained in the call text very well. You have to click that you are eligible for this, and this element will also be added. When you look at the family allowance and special needs allowance, you will notice that these elements, even if you are not eligible for them, they do not significantly diminish the amount of money you receive. That's the PI salary. You might be more interested in the yellow slice here, which is quite big as well. And this is the extra money that you can get to cover your research costs. Now, there's a cap on that because your research costs cannot come up to more than 100,000 euros for a 2-year project, which comes to this nice sum in Polish currency. And this is where individual projects will differ because depending on what theme you are following, what kind of research is involved in your project, you will or will not claim some of the cost items. So let's take a look at what is possible under research costs. First of all, we mentioned that there's a team building element in POLONEZ BIS. So the grant can pay for additional salaries of the mentor. There's a monthly cap on that. And also for additional salaries of other investigators. And you can recruit new investigators to your team, or you can assign the investigators to the project and pay them some additional, some extra salary. There is no limit on the number of other investigators. There is no cap on salaries other than all the costs listed here cannot exceed 100,000 euros. When it comes to the research team, you also have an option to hire or grant scholarships to students and PhD students. This might be important in some grants and to some researchers, perhaps less important to others. So we give you this option. There is absolutely no obligation to include students or PhD students, but we encourage you to do so because this builds not only the capacity of the team, but also builds the capacity of the host institution. Now, notice here that we say hire or grant scholarships. Now, the good thing about POLONEZ BIS is that you do not have to decide what you're going to do at the moment you write your proposal. Okay, we understand that you may not be that familiar with the regulations about granting scholarships. You may not be that familiar with the host institution. So when you're planning your budget, you do not have to decide. This is all one category. So all you have to do is plan the amount of money, and you can decide later on which is more practical for you. Hire students or grant scholarships to them. Now, the money you set aside for students or PhD students, it's separate from everything else. But there's a degree of flexibility during the funding term. So if you change your mind later on, there are ways to move the money between the categories. Now, the biggest category under the research cost is what we call other direct costs of research. They have to be direct costs, meaning that you can spend the money on anything that is necessary to carry out the research you described and to bring about the scientific results that you have planned. So first of all, you can buy small equipment, devices, software, and there's a cap per a unit of equipment, but there's no limit as to how many units you need. You can buy consumables and supplies that are necessary for the research plan. You can also fund business trips, i.e. travel, subsistence allowances for you, but also for the members of your research team. This includes payments for intersectoral secondments, but also field trips if they're necessary, even if there are field trips abroad. And of course, conference fees, hotels, travel to those conferences and stuff. If there are some elements in the research tasks that your host institution has no capacity of doing on their premises, we will also allow you to outsource those to third parties, and the research cost can cover outsourced services. In some projects, it might be necessary to invite external experts or collaborators to visit the project to give expert advice. And if this is the case in your project, the grant will also cover travel and subsistence costs of such external experts. Last but not least, you can also cover all the costs of promoting the project and project results. And this also includes the project website that we will ask you to create to bring up the visibility, not only of Polonez BIS, but of Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions as such. Now, when you look at the items listed here, you might be wondering what about the cost of publications? Because they have not been listed anywhere here. Okay, now they cannot be listed here because of the National Science Center's policy, open access policy. And this is also described in detail in the call text. But what you may notice up here is a very narrow slice of indirect costs of open access. So what you can budget in your project is also up to 2% of the direct costs, okay, in order to be able to pay for open access fees for publication of your research results. Apart from that, there is also a bigger slice of indirect costs, and this is something that your host institution will be very much interested in, because this slice, up to 20% of the direct costs of the yellow and blue combined together, this is usually what goes to the host institution. But I've got good news for you. The host institution will have to commit to share this slice with you as well. So 25% of this slice has to be negotiated with you as a principal investigator. The host institution has to come to an agreement with you how the money will be spent. A part of this slice of indirect costs will also be used to hire or assign an administrative assistant to your project. So again, a person who will help you with relocation, administrative efforts, and financial management of the project once the research starts. So this slice is important if you when you go to the host institution and you make your pitch, right? Because if they are not persuaded by the fact that they do not have to spend any of their money on you, okay? So not only they're not going to add money from their own budget to that, but they will also be able to use a portion of the money generated by the project. So that's also pretty attractive. So let's get to the gist of it. We are about 1 month into the proposal submission period, and some of you may already have started completing the proposals. Some of you may still be thinking about applying. So how should you go about this? What do you do before applying? So first of all, check if you're indeed eligible to apply. So eligibility in terms of principal investigator refers first of all to the experience you have and the mobility requirement. I have also included here career development. It is not a formal requirement in the sense that there are no special documents that you have to provide with your proposal, but you have to think about what impact the project will have on your career development. Because if you cannot think of any professional development thanks to the project, then it's probably not going to be looked at very favorably by the reviewers. Okay, so this is a must, the career development. Now we have prepared a lot of documents to help you with the eligibility and career development. So first of all, there's a call text. The complete call text is published on the National Science Center website. We also have a guide for applicants. We have, as mentioned before, 2 specific documents when we ask you a question about compliance with eligibility criteria and how you are going to develop your career thanks to the project. The second thing, if you find out that you are indeed eligible, is find appropriate host institution. And the word appropriate is very important here, and I'll come back a number of times later on in this presentation. So of course, there are different ways you can find an appropriate host institutions. I just wanted to mention 2 tools here. One is the partner search tool that we have created for both host institutions and for researchers, where both parties can make themselves more visible to each other. And so you can go to this page, register there, complete a short form about yourself and your interests, and make yourself visible to those institutions who might be looking for new researchers. We are asking the same question of Polish host institutions, and there are already some expressions of interest there that you may also want to look through. Another good source and resource of information about institutions in Poland is EURAXESS Poland. This is a European operated portal where different countries have separate tabs, and this is a good source of information about the Polish scientific landscape, institutional landscape, but they also list different types of institutions. They publish links to those institutions, and they also list institutions which received European Excellence in Research Award. When you see this sign, this logo next to a Polish institution, either on the EURAXESS website, or when you enter a website of any university or on the research institute in Poland, and you see this sign, this means that the way the institution operates, the way they recruit researchers, the way they employ and talk to researchers they employed, that all those ways have been vetted by a special body within the European Commission, that the institution has prepared an action plan to make the working conditions better, and the way it communicates with its employees better, more in other words, that the institution makes an effort to become a better place for the people it employs. And last but not least, contact the prospective mentor, and also contact the project office or research and development office of the host institution. There are at least 3 good reasons to do that. The first is the host institution capacity form. We'll take the host institution capacity form. There are 12 questions there. Ask your mentor what the answers will be to those 12 questions. Ask yourselves, do you like them? Is that, are these the answers that you would like to hear? Is that the environment where you would like to work? But also talk to the project office or R&D office, where people are looking at more administrative side of things. The funding the institution will get from POLONEZ BIS may constitute state aid. If this is so, the institution will have to produce some additional documents and probably get in touch with us. So as usual, extra procedures take more time. Internal procedures differ from institution to institution. The proposal that you complete in an online system, it has to be signed. It takes time to move the document through different offices. So get in touch with them more formally to find out what those internal procedures will be. Do not leave it till the very last day. We talked about eligibility, so let's start answering those questions that you guys asked when registering. Who are eligible applicants? The first criterion for eligibility is research experience, and Polonez BIS is open to researchers who already have the PhD. If they do have a PhD diploma, we ask to upload the scan of it in the online submission system. If there is no PhD, or if there is no diploma, because sometimes the qualification period is over, but diploma is not yet there, then we ask you to collect documents confirming at least 4 years of full-time research experience and upload those documents in the system, right? So without those documents, the proposal will not be complete, and you will not be able to submit it. In the system, what's important to remember is that if the original documents were not in Polish or in English, then we also ask you to upload a translation into Polish or into English. It doesn't have to be a sworn translation, right? But we have to know what these documents are all about. If you do not have a PhD and you are counting those 4 years of full-time research experience, remember that the starting point for measuring the 4 years is from the date you obtained a degree which entitles you to start on a doctoral program. So in most countries, it would be a master's of science of arts or so. If you're not sure if your diploma or degree is recognized in Poland, well, you may always ask at the host institution, but if you have not yet found one, then you can use what's called kwalifikator system. This is a special database that was prepared by our sister funding agency, Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange. The system works in Polish and in English. It asks you some simple questions, and when you answer those, the system will generate a recognition certificate for you. And this recognition certificate will tell you whether it's okay, whether the diploma or degree you have is recognized in Poland or not. And if it's not recognized, it'll sometimes give you hints of as to what you have to do. The information found in the database is guaranteed by an electronic signature of the agency. Okay, so this really is a pretty reliable source if you're not sure. The other extremely important requirement, eligibility requirement for applicants, is the mobility requirement. And I already said that applicants must move to Poland for the duration of the fellowship. They must not have resided, studied, or been employed in Poland for more than 12 months during the 3 years before the call launch. So for the present call, this means the time between mid-September 2018 and mid-September 2022. We have a special attachment to the proposal that helps you find out if you're eligible here. And basically this consists of a table where we ask you to list different periods of stay in different countries, and tell us, and also provide the documents that confirm your stay and what you were doing during that stay, with documents confirming the mobility requirement. We're not asking you for translation, we just ask you for the original plus the description of it. It might sometimes be difficult to count exactly what like different periods of time. So we are asking you to account for the time between mid-September 2018 and mid-September 2021 in full. Do not leave any gaps. We are going to do the counting of any time spent in Poland during that time. The scans of documents that confirm your stay outside of Poland. This could be a work contract, a study certificate, any other documents in your name. There's one very important thing to remember. If you were employed in Poland for more than 12 months between September 18 and September 21, you will not be eligible for Polonez bis even if your employment in Poland during that period was in fact unpaid leave of absence, like an unpaid sabbatical. Okay, if there is or there has been an employment contract with a Polish institution, we assume that your links to Poland have not been broken. So there is no true mobility back to Poland, right? So this would actually disqualify you from applying. There are some other situations which will not allow you to apply. So, for example, if you were previously funded as a Polonez fellow, you cannot apply to Polonez bis. If you were a PI in a research project carried out at a Polish institution during the 3 years before the call launch, then you cannot apply. Or if you have any other proposal underway at the NCN. So if you submit a proposal to Polonez and other call in the current edition, or if you already submitted a proposal, you received a funding decision and have not signed the agreement, or your proposal is under evaluation or is under appeal, okay, these things would generally not allow you to apply for Polonez bis. What's important is that if you have submitted a proposal to another funder, so not to NCN, to someone else, in Poland or abroad, and this proposal is still under evaluation, you may apply for Polonez bis. But if both proposals are funded, you will have to make a choice. You will not be able to carry out 2 projects at the same time. You also have to make a number of commitments, and these commitments are for the funding terms, but we ask you to make those commitments, be aware of those, and make them already at the proposal stage. So we stress the fact that you will have to reside in Poland for 100% of the project funding term, and that you will have to be available to the host institution throughout as their employee. Of course, if you need to leave on a business trip abroad because it is related to the project, or you use your holiday time, of course, this is included in your residence in Poland, but otherwise you have to be in Poland for the duration of the project. You will also have to participate in at least 3 two-day training courses. So we'll be taking away some of your weekends. And we also ask you to plan to carry out an intersectoral secondment phase outside of the host institution. That's at least 14 days. You also commit not to do certain things, and the things you commit not to do are mostly to exclude double funding. So because it is, Polonez bis is a mobility funding, then you cannot use any other sources of funding to arrive or stay in Poland. You cannot participate in any international mobility during Polonez bis, except when you have to go abroad because you are carrying out Polonez. You cannot receive salary from other NCN grants, and you cannot receive salary from another employer based on an employment contract, and this also refers to employers outside of Poland. But the eligibility is not only connected with applicants, it is also connected with the host institutions, and generally all legal entities that are registered in Poland are eligible, and they may represent any sector. The proposal should describe only one host institution. This host institution will employ you full-time. But of course, you may cooperate with more than one institution in Poland or abroad, for example, during short-term secondments. What's important is that the profile of the host institution you select should match the nature of your research project, and it should also match your profile and professional goals that you set in the career development plan. So this is what we mean by appropriate host institution. Now, the hosting arrangements are described in host institution capacity form. And again, if you are about to choose a host institution which is not a public finance sector, or the funding will constitute state aid for this institution, make sure you contact us, or they contact us as fast as possible, as soon as possible, because more documents will be needed from host institutions in those cases. Some host institutions will not be eligible or may not be eligible for your particular project, right? So you cannot do POLONEZ BIS grant or carry out the POLONEZ BIS project at the institution which employed you within 3 years before the submission deadline. So between December 2018 and December 2021. And if you are planning to return to the institution which granted your PhD, additional conditions apply. So generally, you have to look at how far you departed from the institution that granted you a PhD. If since the PhD award, you carried out postdoctoral fellowships outside Poland for at least 3 years, and at least one of them was for 12 months uninterrupted, you can still choose the institution that granted you your PhD as your host. Otherwise, such institution will not be eligible. And again, there's a special part dedicated to those of you who would want to get back to the institution who granted you your PhD. So there are questions there and the place to listen, document the postdoctoral fellowships. And also the proposal includes your declaration regarding previous or current employment in the host institution. The host institution also has to commit, and good news, they commit to way more things than you have to commit to. So first of all, they'll employ you full-time, and they will comply with the European Charter for Researchers and the Code of Conduct for the recruitment of researchers. They have to employ a mentor with a sufficient working time so that they will be able to supervise the project and spend time mentoring you. The institution has to give you free, full access to facilities, infrastructure, equipment, which is necessary to carry out the project. And as mentioned before, they have to appoint or employ an administrative assistant, fluent in Polish and English, who will help you in the administrative matters. And they will have also to reach an agreement with you on how to use at least 25% of the other indirect costs. And of course, support you in promoting the research outputs, open access publishing, and data management. Okay, I've been talking long enough. Now, when you look at different slides with different eligibility criteria, it all looks nice. But when it comes to specific cases, it may not. So I would like to ask you to help Marie decide if she's eligible. for Polonez BIS? Well, this is Marie. As you can see, she has marked in her calendar the 15th of September 2021, as most of you also have done. And this is Marie's background. She moved to Poland in November last year. She has been employed as a researcher at the fictional university since there. Marie has an excellent research idea, would like to apply for Polonez BIS in December, so call 1. Is Marie eligible? What do you think?
Hello, I think it's quite fitting for me. Maybe I can talk. Can I talk? Can you hear me?
Sure.
It's my understanding right now is that it cannot be at the same university, at the same fictional university, but it could be because she has not worked in Poland for 1 full year at the beginning of the call.
Okay, so you're on the right track. Is there any element of this story where we can say for sure that she actually complies with at least one of the criteria, 100%? Kind of difficult because all the rules apply at once, right? So when you take them one at a time, it's easy. Okay, I'll tell you. Well, Marie complies with the mobility requirement, right? Her time in Poland in general is less than 12 months. Okay, so that's one criterion which we can okay. Now, as you mentioned, we do not have enough information to decide if Marie is in fact an experienced researcher, right? This doesn't say. So we would have to ask, is there a PhD or 4 years equivalent? So that was pointed out very well. Now, if Marie has the required experience, she can apply for Polonez BIS, but the fictional university is not eligible as her host institution. Right? So Marie will have to look for another host. Okay, where will she look? She can look at the partner search tool, or she can go to Euraccess Poland, or she can take any other road to identify a good host institution for a project.
Can I ask one more very quick question? It said if we have applied for Opus, for instance, Opus 21, which I did last year, even though my situation is very similar to Marie's, but I applied for Opus 2021. My understanding a few steps ago, I don't know where that noise is coming from, I'm sorry. But that because I had applied for Opus, I cannot apply for Polonez BIS, is that correct?
But it's still under evaluation, right?
It's under evaluation, yes.
Yeah. So you could make a decision now that you withdraw from evaluation, okay? And then you can apply for Polonez. But as long as your previous Opus is under evaluation, you cannot apply at this point.
And if I were to get a decision on Opus, for instance, my understanding is it should happen in the beginning of December, but that would also nullify me because I then had a rejected or granted with the NCN.
But it depends what the decision will be, right? Because if it's a rejection, then you're free to apply. Okay. If it's a funding decision, if you are funded, then you have to, well, it's a risky game to play, right? Because you either take what you already have or you play the game, right? So it's up to you.
But it would be better maybe for the NCN if that game didn't have to be played. You know what I mean? Because
okay,
then you only have the second.
That's a suggestion for a whole different discussion.
Thank you very much for your time and hosting and etc.
Okay, I just wanted to very quickly show you what Marie will find in Partner Search Tool. I will not go into details, but if she goes there, she will see a list of all institutions and also a list of all researchers who already registered. And she may create an account and decide to complete her own expression of interest so that she's more visible to others. So she can also look at the competition in a sense, because she'll be able to see who else is looking for a job in Poland under Polonez BIS. If she decides to complete an expression of interest, as I said, the tool will ask a couple of short questions, and she will have to agree to have them published. Her contact information will also be published, and the NCN will not use the contact information to initiate any contact between the host institution and Marie, but Marie may be more easy to find to the host institutions. But whether in fact it is easy or it's not easy, and how you play the game and how you find the host institution and what you have to do to be happy in that host institution and complete your project successfully, this is a story not up to me to tell. I would like to give the floor to Alek now, who is our previous Polonez fellow. Aleksander, are you here?
Hello.
I'll stop sharing and the floor is yours.
For this introduction. So let me start my presentation. Okay, so my name is Aleksander, and I was a Polonez fellow that was recruited in the first round or first call of the previous section of Polonez grants. And today I'd like to tell you a bit about my research story, so to speak, and how the Polonez fellowship impacted upon my career, and why, in my opinion, this can be something very useful for your career. So first of all, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I'm a cell biologist who is generally interested in immunology and microbiology. Throughout my scientific career, I focused on studies of chronic inflammation and ideas for identifying new therapies that could be used for treatment of chronic inflammatory conditions. It might be important from the perspective of the NCN applications, because that means that I fall under the NCN panel NZ, which stands for life sciences. And obviously, there are quite substantial differences in how research is conducted in different areas of science. So what I'm going to tell you today is probably very much applicable to other life scientists, but not all of it might be directly transferable to, for example, people working in social sciences or technical sciences. So what was my professional story? I did my master's in biotechnology in Poland, in Krakow at the Jagiellonian University, and I graduated in 2007. And then I moved for quite a long time abroad, where I spent approximately 10 years. And in 2007, I started my PhD at the Academic Medical Center in Amsterdam as part of the University of Amsterdam. And in total, I spent there almost 6 years. It was a PhD and a 1-year postdoc. And obviously, I'm not going to tell you about the particular science that I was doing there, but I will just mention the general themes that I've been working on, because it might be also quite important for you to give you an idea that your Polonez application needs to be compatible with your previous research, but it doesn't need to be a direct extension of your previous research. So in Amsterdam, I studied epigenetic regulation in synovial cells in the context of chronic inflammation in rheumatoid arthritis. And after that period, I moved for 3 years to the UK, where I did a postdoc at the Manchester Collaborative Centre for Inflammation Research, where I studied defects in dead cell removal by lung macrophages and their role in inflammatory lung diseases. And in 2016, I moved back to Poland, to the Department of Microbiology, again at the Jagiellonian University, where I study the regulation of gene expression in another inflammatory condition, which is inflammatory gum disease, known as periodontitis. It's probably quite easy to guess when you look at my professional journey that the Polonez Fellowship played a key role in this transition. So in moving from my postdoc at the University of Manchester to starting a position or my independent research line at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow. And I will tell you briefly about the application timeline that's applied in my case. First of all, it will give you an idea about the thinking process, the planning process that I've been going through. And second, it will also give you an idea how much time you actually need from conceiving the idea to move to Poland to actually starting the fellowship. So in the summer of 2015, I was approaching the final year of my 3-year postdoc in Manchester. And at the time I was started thinking about my next professional step. And at that time I was contemplating whether I should apply for another postdoc position or if I should consider looking for my own funding, either in the UK or perhaps back in Poland. And at that time, I was about 3 years after my PhD, I decided that I don't really want to apply for another postdoc position, that it is the time for me to kind of make a move and try to start my independent scientific career. And at the time, I also thought that this is the right moment. It was about 9 years, or at the time, 8 years since I moved abroad, to contemplate moving back to my home country and contemplating whether there is a career opportunity back in Poland. And in summer 2015, I initiated contact with my research partner at the Jagiellonian University, Jan Potempa. At that time, I did not collaborate with him. I only knew him from my previous master courses, but I knew that he was one of the top Polish scientists in the fields of microbiology and biochemistry. And I knew that he worked in the area that was not directly related to what I do, but it was quite compatible with what I do, because at the time, as I mentioned before, I was always interested in chronic inflammatory diseases and gene regulation in these diseases. And Jan was an expert in periodontal disease, and the microbiology underlying this pathology. And periodontal disease is another type of chronic inflammation. So there was this compatibility between my ideas and my experience and his research. And after I contacted him, he liked the idea of this collaboration, and we decided to look for opportunities, to look for funding. And I should probably stress that at the time when I contacted my research partner, I wasn't even aware of the existence of the Polonez call. But we started looking for possibilities to fund this type of grant or fellowship that would allow me to move from the UK back to Poland with my own independent funding. And there was this great coincidence for me that actually the first Polonez call was launched at the time. So we discussed the idea for the research project, and between October and November, I prepared under Jan's supervision a project proposal. That project was titled Epigenetics of Periodontitis, Alterations in the Host Protein Acetylation System as a Potentially Fundamental Mechanism for Disease Development. And in December 2015, so that was exactly the same timeline that you have right now. So the call was open since 15 September and deadline for application was 15 December. In December 2015, I submitted my application. In March 2016, I was invited for an interview. And in May 2016, we heard the announcements of ranking list, and I was among the group of first grantees of the first Polonez call, and I started my fellowship in October 2016. So what you can see from this list, what is probably important to keep in mind, that thinking about this transition, about using this mobility opportunity, is something that probably needs to be planned ahead. In my case, it was almost 1.5 years. It can be done faster. But I don't think it can be done a lot faster. So I strongly recommend, from my own perspective, thinking about particularly about research proposal, but also about the host institution, and especially about the scientists that will eventually be your research partner, your mentor, quite a long time ahead. And then moving on, the question is there life after the Polonez Fellowship? And well, obviously I wouldn't be here talking to you if there wasn't. And just to briefly tell you how my scientific, my professional life unfolded after the Polonez Fellowship. So I currently hold an assistant professor group leader position, still at the Department of Microbiology. I'm running now, or building, I should say, a relatively growing group that now currently consists of 3 PhD students, 1 technician, and a varying number of undergraduate students. And my research group is currently supported by two funding sources, by 2 grants. So in 2018, just at the end of my Polonez Fellowship, I received a first team grant from the Foundation for Polish Science, which is an independent funding body that covers basic and translational research in Poland. And this grant allowed me to formally start establishing my research group within the Jagiellonian University. And in 2020, I obtained the Opus grant from the National Science Center, which allowed me to further increase the size of my group and the scope of my research. So, but a long story short, that the Polonez Fellowship was kind of, for me, was this initial key step in switching from a postdoc to starting an independent scientific career that I decided to pursue in Poland. However, I would like to emphasize that there are many paths that can lead to the Polonez Fellowships. And based on my experience and the experience of my colleagues, the Polonez Fellowships can be used in many different ways. So for some other Polonez grantees, it was essentially a first, or not necessarily a first, but a 2-year postdoc, which they used as a section of their career before moving further in their professional journey, so to speak. For others, and this is also my case, it was a first step in establishing my own lab and my own independent research line. And I believe that there were also some fellows that considered it as part of larger international collaborative research. And there were places or forest institutions in Poland that were parts of these international collaborations, and Polonez allowed provided the platform for mobility within this supporting mobility within these collaborations. And I've probably already been talking for a bit too long, so I just have a few tips for you. Jola already mentioned all of them essentially, but I would probably like to emphasize some that I consider most important from my own perspective as the former Polonez Fellow. As Jola mentioned, there are 2 compatibilities which are essential for a successful Polonez application. It's a compatibility with research partner and compatibility with your own expertise. So we obviously all have many different reasons to decide for particular places in Poland where we applied. For me, of course, the first thought was private considerations. Kraków is my hometown, my family lives here, so it was a natural direction in Poland for me. But of course, that doesn't do the trick. You need to find a research partner that is compatible with your research, with your experience, and basically with the National Science Center requirements. And the same holds true for your own expertise. And as I mentioned before, I changed research fields quite a lot during my career. The general research theme, which is chronic inflammation, was there all the time, but I worked on different pathologies. So that means that while your proposal doesn't need to be a direct continuation of your previous research, it has to be linked, because otherwise it is quite difficult, I believe, to obtain funding to do something that you've not been really linked to and you've not touched upon before. And finally, as also Yola mentioned, I believe what is quite important is to have a clear idea of the role of the fellowship in your career development. I believe at the time when I was applied, this career development plan was not there. I guess Yola will confirm, and now it's part of the application. But 2 years is a short period, especially in experimental life sciences. Obviously, we won't have a clear idea where we are going to be in 5 years or 10 years from now. But I think it's good to have this general concept, whether this fellowship is just meant to be a 2-year postdoc, or it's a first step in establishing your research line. Because basically, if it's the latter, essentially halfway through your Polonez fellowship, if your application is successful, you need to start applying for other sources of fundings to continue this work, because like I said, 2 years is good, but it's not a lot, especially if you start a new research line. So just a final slide from my side, just summarizing the opportunities and challenges, many of which I already mentioned. Most of them were also covered by Yola. So like I said, for me, the Polonez Fellowship was the first step in my independent scientific career, and it allowed me to start establishing my own research lab. Obviously, there is not that much funding to hire personnel. You're not going to be able probably to hire a postdoc from your Polonez Fellowship. But if you start interacting with students, perhaps collaborate with your research mentor and share a PhD student, hire a technician, there is room for hiring personnel and for starting this path which goes towards establishing your own group, your own team. Ultimately, at least for me, it was kind of a confirmation of the quality of my research. At that time, when I contemplating applying for the Polonez Fellowship, I probably had doubts whether my qualifications are good enough to pursue an independent scientific career. And well, the Polonez program is highly competitive. As I mentioned here, at that time when I applied, the success rate was about 10%. And your proposals are marked by 2 local experts and 3 independent reviewers. So it is tough, but if you're successful, it really confirms the quality of you as a scientist and of your research idea. As Ila also mentioned, it offers a nice career development program with all the training sessions that we need to attend that I actually found extremely useful. And also there are opportunities to develop commercial international collaborations, which at that time were called study visits. I believe now it's called differently, but I guess the idea is quite similar. And there are challenges. Like I said, this is a competitive program with 10% success rate. We will see what kind of success rate there will be in these calls. As I mentioned before, the 2 years is not a lot of time to establish a new research line. So you need a clear idea how you want to pursue your work after Polonez if you're successful. And what I already also mentioned here, and it was also mentioned in Yola's presentation, especially for people who have not worked in Poland before and have not had any experience with Polish bureaucracy and administration, there's a very important role of administrative support by the host institutions, and it's very much worth checking that when you agree with your potential host institutions on the collaboration application. So I think with that, I would like to wrap up. If there is anyone who doesn't have any clear idea for a question right now, but if it comes up later, this is my email address. You're free to email me if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions related to my experience with the Polonez Fellowship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alek. And I think with that, we are ready for Małgorzata to tell us more about how tough the assessment procedures can be, as Alec mentioned. So Małgorzata, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jola, for inviting me here. My name is Małgorzata, and please let me share my screen now. Okay, so welcome everyone again. What I would like to present to you today is the evaluation process of proposals in the POLONEZ BIS program. I hope that understanding the process will help you prepare a competitive application and present yourself in the best possible way. So let's move to the subject. The merit-based evaluation process in POLONEZ BIS is a two-step process. But before the merit-based evaluation, the NCN officers will check whether your project is your proposal is completed and eligible. If yes, we will send the project to members of the expert panel who evaluated the project individually. And each project will be evaluated by 2 experts. Then all experts from the panel will meet, compare projects, and decide which should be passed to the second stage of the evaluation process and which should be rejected at this stage. And after the first panel, all applicants receive feedback from the experts. And proposals which are passed to the second stage will be evaluated by external reviewers and by ethical experts who will evaluate ethics issues of the proposed research. Then the expert panel will meet again, verify external reviews, and interview the candidates. And based on that, they will decide on financing the applications. And so they prepare a ranking list with proposal recommended for funding. This will be proposal with mark A. And they also prepare a waiting list with good proposal which fall outside the limit of available funds allocated to the call, but which could be funded in case of any applicant's resignation on the ranking list. And of course, there is a possibility of appealing against the decision, but only in the event of breach of the call procedure or other formal infringements. So I've explained briefly how the process looks like, and now I would like to discuss proposal evaluation criteria, which in my opinion are critical to prepare good proposal. So firstly, I would like to explain that the evaluation form for experts consists of 2 parts: general yes, no questions and bullet scored questions. So the first 4 questions regard the eligibility and quality of the proposal. And because the NCN support only basic research in Poland, there is also a question whether the proposal concerns basic research. And there is a question, so what is the basic research? So we recognize as a basic research experimental and theoretical adventures undertaken to gain new knowledge of the foundation of the phenomena and of observable facts without any direct commercial use. In the technology readiness level scale, we mainly accept the first 4 levels, but this is the decision. Finally, it's always the decision of experts. There are also other no questions mainly about data management plan, ethics issue, interdisciplinary nature of the project and costs. And please remember that in the NCN, we do not have cost negotiations. So if experts accept your budget, there will not be any cut. However, if they decide that that costs are not justified with regard to the proposed research, the project will be automatically rejected. So please put attention to the budget in your project. And Then there is a scoring criterion on the scientific quality. And there is a scoring criteria on the scientific quality, where originality and innovation nature of the project are assessed, as well as methodology and work plan. And there is also the potential impact of the project on the research field will be evaluated, and potential for high quality research publication. And here in A3, experts will also evaluate how results of the project will be disseminated and exploited within the general public, so not only within the in the research field. And in the next criterion, experts will evaluate qualification and scientific achievements of applicants, and they will take into consideration track record of PI, outputs of the previous projects, presentation to international established conferences, prize, awards, and other research activities. And what is important, so please notice that also other research competences will be evaluated, other not research competences will be evaluated here, like intersectoral experiences. And not only PI, but also mentor will be assessed by experts. And here, despite of research achievements and qualifications, also mentoring and supervising research are important, or other. And in the next criterion, experts will also evaluate host institution by PI of the relevance of the choice, quality of the facility, opportunities for integration of the applicant into the existing team, as well as an international networking and possible mutual gain from knowledge transfer between host and the applicant. And at the end, based on the PI's CV and career development plan, experts will evaluate the impact of the project on the career development of the applicants in the context of the development of the scientific career and getting transferable and intersectoral skills. As I said, all these 7 criteria are scored from 1 to 5, and they have a different weighting. However, all proposal should get at least 70% of points to be funded, to be recommended for funding. And now we have come to the question: who will evaluate the proposal? So there will be 3 international expert panels. One is in life sciences, one in physical sciences and engineering, and the third one in arts, humanities, and social sciences. And members of this panel will be selected by the NCN Council. They will represent different disciplines, but there will not be necessary specialists in the subject of submitted proposals. They will prepare assessment of the application, the first stage of the evaluation process, based on the short description of the project. So please remember that this 5-page project description should be understandable to non-specialist panel members. So, for example, for the life sciences, it should be if you prepare a project on molecular biology, it should be also understandable for medical doctors, for example. Coming back to the point to the experts, experts also, they will also select application for the second stage. During the expert meeting, they will select reviewers for proposal in the second stage of evaluation. Then they will also conduct interviews with candidates and recommend application for funding. Besides panel experts, members of panel experts, of expert panels, also external experts will be engaged in the evaluation process as reviewers. They will be specialists in the subject of the proposals, and they will assess project based on the 15 pages detailed description. And there will be also ethical experts who will evaluate only ethics issue of proposals at the second stage of evaluation process. And at the end, I would like to mention an interview which is planned with all candidates on the second stage of the process of the evaluation process. The interview will be conducted remotely, so applicants will not have to come to Krakow. And information about the exact date of the interview and reviews will be sent within 50 days in advance. But now I can tell you that probably it will be the first half of May, probably about 10th May. And finally, results. We plan to publish them no later than in the first half of June 2022. So applicants who will not receive funding will have possibility to resubmit the proposal in the next call, POLONEZ BIS 2. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to Viola. Give back the floor.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I was wondering, perhaps to sum it up, I will share my screen for a minute to show you what I think could be a takeaway message from this before we go into questions. So I think with this presentation, like our starting point was talking about jobs and recruitment and research positions, and I think that we all agree that a good job is a job that allows you to combine talents and skills with interests and values, right? So this is what we feel POLONEZ BIS can give you. We guarantee the processes which are fair and transparent for recruitment. We give you funds for professional growth in the new environment. We give you extra funding for research, which strengthens your independence. It also strengthens your pitch at the host institution. So this also is something that we feel is important. Now, the National Science Center as a funder has a proven record in successful performance of grants of that sort, and we will support you all the way. As you have already seen, we produce documents to help you through different processes. We'll be organizing webinars. We'll be here. You will have a dedicated POLONEZ BIS team that will be with you from the very beginning to the moment you are ready to submit your final report. Well, we have 109 POLONEZ fellows who already completed the program. Over 40 of them successfully applied for NCN grants to continue research in Poland. So this, I guess, is another answer to the question Alek asked, is there life after POLONEZ? Yes. And some of that life can also be funded by the National Science Center. Before I give the floor to your questions, I would like to go back to my initial questions. So, are you ready for a change now? And if you still need more information, well, the floor is yours for questions.
Thank you all very much. I think it was very thorough and very engaging. And I see in our chat that there's quite a few questions. So maybe I will give this time now for people who would like to ask a question in person. Otherwise, I can browse through the questions and pick. Ilona asked, how important is the HR Excellence in Research Award? Should we try to avoid host institutions that have not been awarded?
Okay, well, do not avoid institutions just because they do not yet have the HR award. I'm saying if you do not have any other ways of contacting institutions, that might be one of the criteria to use. In the host institution capacity form, 2 questions are asked. One is about the HR Excellence Award, and this is an award given by the European Union, by the European Commission. We also ask about the evaluation, which is evaluation mark, which is given to Polish institutions during the internal evaluation process here by the Ministry of Science and Education. And most of the institutions within the academia will have that. So these are just to help you compare institutions if you do not have a clue. But as Alex suggested, it's equally important to look at the actual persons and teams you're going to work with. So look at the mentor, right? Sometimes the institutions do not have to compete for HR award. Those that do, I mean, you will notice when you go to their pages, you will notice their action plans for development. But there are lots of good institutions who will rank A or A+ in Poland, but their HR award may still be in the process. So they may not still have the right to use it. So it's simply one of the ways of looking at those institutions, right? And it might be that if you find 2 institutions that are relatively similar and one of them has the award and the other one doesn't, and both places in Poland are okay with you, then I would use the HR award perhaps as a deciding factor. But it should not be, in general, the only deciding factor, right? Go for people. That's more important.
Okay, thank you. And now another question. If the project is not funded in the first call, can it be resubmitted after improvements in the further call?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Does the financial support include maternity leave, sick leave, retirement pension?
Okay, now the employment contract that will be offered by the host institutions has to follow Polish labor law. So yes, it includes maternity, paternity, family leaves of all kinds. There is the retirement tax paid also. Now, what's important is that when you come to work under Polonez BIS, you get all the rights and all the obligations as any other researcher working in Poland for the institution of your choice under the same type of contract. There are no exclusions. I would like to make one reservation here. Now, the system in Poland works in such a way that once you start a job and you start paying social security taxes, And if you get pregnant and you want to use the maternity, or your partner gets pregnant and you want to use the paternity allowances, these are calculated based on your previous salary, the salary from the previous 12 months. So for women especially, we had a number of cases where we suspended Polonez bis for the duration of the family leave or maternity leave. And during this time, it's not the host institution that pays your wages, you're getting maternity benefits, right? So this is also possible. And we will use amendments to the funding agreement in such situations.
Perfect.
But yes, you do have the right to sick leave, retirement. Yes, it's only 2 years of a grant though, so hopefully you will not be retiring right after that.
Hopefully not. Are there any more questions from the audience who would like to ask them themselves? Now is the time to unmute.
Again,
Go ahead.
I wonder if there's any data about who has been funded. For instance, have they been mostly younger people? Maybe they're mostly people who have established research careers. They're 10 years after their PhD. And also about the distribution then also of international and Polish is mostly, I see in the comments also somebody applied for a Polish return grant. There's one question about there. But is it mostly people who are funded through this grant, Polish citizens, for instance, returning to Poland, or people coming out from outside of Poland? And then finally, sorry, one more question, but I wonder about the size of the project. Should we be planning a project that fits in 2 years, or a project that, in theory, I have one idea about a package in R that would need to be continually kind of funded, or it would be more of a starting grant for this package that in the future would then hopefully get more funding. So just to summarize, the size of the project, the distribution of who has been funded, especially in terms of age and their international distribution, and that's it. Thank you again for this. Nice.
Okay, I can answer the statistics questions now. Among applicants in 3 editions of the previous Polonez, we had about 30 people who declared Polish nationality or citizenship. Their share in the funded projects was a bit higher than that, but not all of the people. So about 50% or 50-ish% of the people actually funded were of Polish origin or nationality or citizenship. Not all of them decided to stay in Poland after Polonez. So the fact that you're of this or that nationality, it does not have direct correlation with what you do afterwards. So some of them came from abroad and returned abroad after a 2-year period in Poland. As to the age, we do not look at the age of applicants, we look at the career stages. So we had, I think about 20%, sorry, let me go to the first Polonez web page. To check that, but I think we had relatively the same level of the same numbers looking at people like 3 years after PhD, up to 7 years after PhD, and 12 years after PhD. If you're more experienced than that, but there's no formal cutoff here. But if you are more experienced, and we did have some people like applying 20 years after PhD, but it becomes more and more difficult to demonstrate the real impact of your career development. The more experienced you are, the easier it is to talk about knowledge transfer, but more difficult about career development. And the other way around, we also had people for whom POLONEZ BIS was the first grant after their PhD. Okay, so that's, for those people, it's easier to think career development wise, but for knowledge transfer both ways, it may not be that easy. So altogether, we think that the proposal is, the career development plan is well leveled, well balanced, because we have both aspects in the proposal. So it allows people to choose where they are, where they would like to go. I forgot what was the third question. I think it was something about a bigger project, right? I mean, you have to plan your budget and you have to plan research tasks for what we fund. So quite obviously, since there is a part of the description of the project where you have to think about impact and what will happen afterwards. So there's a part where you can accommodate that your plans are actually going further. But in terms of what goes into the proposal is you're applying for what you want us to fund within the 2 years, I think. Małgorzata, would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely, I agree. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Nothing.
One final thing. I'm sorry, I know Joanna, you have a question as well. But so, is there any sort of preference? I kind of would like to stay in Poland. Should I write about that? Then, on the other hand, is there any sort of preference in terms of I would like to hire a specialist in this area? And is there a preference to try and find one either in Poland, or maybe would it benefit also the application if I say, okay, I know a guy in the US who I can also potentially bring on this grant? Would that be any sort of benefit or hindrance, if that makes sense?
I think the reviewers are looking at is the composition of your research team well matched in terms of qualification and the scope of tasks. It doesn't really matter whether your team is dispersed. You know, they can be geographically dispersed, or they can be all working at the same host institution. It's something you have to consider with the mentor, because this also has to do with the two-way transfer of knowledge, right? So that's definitely a bigger picture. Aleksander, you wanted to add to that?
Perhaps one more important consideration that I would add here is that according to the NCN rules, if you want to hire someone within the project, you cannot specify the name because these are open competitions. So if you have a specific collaborator in mind, you can mention this person as a collaborator, but you cannot really indicate that you're going to hire this person within the project because there's going to be an open competition for this post that you're going to announce. Yola, do you agree?
Like we do not, POLONEZ BIS doesn't have those full-time positions that are restricted here, you know. So I guess it's not that strict really, but the reason we keep co-investigators anonymous is that you know, your plans for projects change. A person who you have in mind now may not be available later on. So what's really important is, and what we are asking principal investigators to describe in the proposal is, what are the tasks? What is the level of competency that will be required to do the task? And how much value do I assign to that? Meaning how much am I willing to pay, right? So that's I believe what's really assessed by the reviewers. So And whether it's John Smith or Jan Malinowski, in the end, it doesn't really matter, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Joanna, would you like to ask your questions?
Yes, hello. My name is Joanna. Thank you so much for the seminar. It's very informative, but I still have several questions. Can you please mention what are the other deadlines for another 2 calls for the proposals?
Yes, and I think we gave them, okay. So basically, we're going to have a call every 6 months. So, yeah, okay, I will share that. Share screen. There you go. So the calls will open in March and then in September, and respectively, they will close in June and in December. And there's 6 months to the funding decisions, right? So if we close the call in June, here the funding decisions will be issued end of November, the beginning of December, right? And if we close submissions in December, then the funding decisions will be in June 23. So this is the way it goes. There was a question there in the chat, which I perhaps will answer just in addition to that. There is a very narrow window between receiving, like in June, right? The Polonez BIS 1 will give you your funding decisions at the beginning of June. Now, Polonez BIS 2 closes on June 15th. So there is a very narrow window if you're in the second stage of evaluation, because if you were rejected earlier, you get your rejection decision earlier. But if you go into the interview stage, right, then you have your rejection decision perhaps right at the beginning of June. So technically speaking, if this is a rejection decision and you're not planning to appeal it, then there's a very narrow window in which you could submit a proposal for the second call. What you would have to do is you would have to start completing the proposal way earlier, right? So that it's almost ready. And the time for you to incorporate the reviewer's comments, right? It will be rather narrow, but it can be done.
Yeah, thank you. And one more question, because you mentioned that we have to pick the panels which will review our applications. And I know that some disciplines, especially in, let's call it broadly life science, they are so difficult to make the decision where they should go. So if we pick the panel which is not 100% suitable, thus the reviewers may move our application to another panel, or the application will be rejected because the reviewer panel was not picked in the proper way. Thank you.
Yes, maybe I can answer. So if you made a mistake or bad choice within the life science, we accept your proposal and we just pass them to experts who are to people who are specialists in the subject of the proposal. So there is no problem. If the project is interdisciplinary within the life science and art, for example, we will find extra expert for the project during the first stage of evaluation. And if you make a huge mistake, so for example, you prepare projects from psychology, for example, and submit it in the physical sciences, this will be rejected because experts will not have opportunity to evaluate it because there is outside their knowledge, yeah, and experience. Is it clear?
Yes, yes, it is. Thank you.
I would just like to add that in Polonez BIS it's easier because for our regular calls, the panels are organized on a much narrower level. But here we only have life sciences, arts and humanities, and physical science and engineering, right? So we will not have that many different panels.
Do we have one more questions from the audience? Then maybe I will ask the final question from the chat. So Upsana wrote that she is confused about her eligibility. She moved to Poland this October and is working as a postdoc fellow in Poznań. And is she eligible to apply for Polonez fellowship? And she has 6 years of research experience.
Yes, so this is a case similar to Marie, right? Because the research is already in Poland while or during the submission process. So her stay in Poland during the 3 years before the call launch, I think it's 0, because if she arrived in October, right, we opened the call on the 15th of September. So when looking at the mobility requirement, we're only looking at those 3 years between mid-September 2018 and mid-September 2021, right? So she's clear for the mobility requirement, but if she's already employed by an institution in Poland, she cannot apply with this institution as the host. So that's the problem, and I can see that she asked, so she will have to look for a different host institution for Polonez. And there's a follow-up question of this. So if she chooses another host institution, can she continue with the current employment? Now, this will be mighty difficult to do in practical terms, but it is also one of the commitments, okay, that one of the exclusions during the funding term, because you are employed full-time in order to carry out the research under Polonez, and you are getting about 3 times as much money as any other Polish researcher for the same job, right? NCN says that's it. The reason we fund your salary pretty generously is for you not to distract yourself from the project that you are funded to do. Okay, so there is no, she will not be able, if she gets funded from Polonez, she will not be able to continue with the current employment.
Okay, thank you. That was clear. Yes, one last question.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, very similar situation for me. But then the question is, we would be available, Upsana and myself are available for this Polonez BIS 1, but then we would not be available in Polonez BIS 2 because we had lived there for more than a year, correct? So the next one would be June, and both her and I, let's say, came in November of last year.
For the next one, we're going to go March to March, right? Because the call will open on the 15th of March. Mm-hmm. So we're looking March 2019 to 14th of March 2022. So we're looking in.
Yeah. So we would not be available at that time because we had been employed for a year.
I mean, you mentioned, I know it's 6, but there's just one thing that I really would like to mention, because Brett, you mentioned before that you have one of the proposals already going on under evaluation for ops, and there's no time to talk about that at length during this webinar, but it's really important to remember that you can get funded as a full-time PI in virtually any national science centers funding opportunity There are very few, I mean, for people who are PhD holders, virtually any grant will allow you to budget your full-time employment. It's true that the money you will get in other calls will not be that generous, because with other calls, we do not have the extra funding from the European Commission. So that's true, but the amounts you get are still higher than the regular salaries of people who work at Polish institutions without grants. And you know, sometimes with some topics, sometimes if you come to a decision that 2 years is not enough, please take a look at other funding schemes that we have, because we do have pretty good calls for projects that last 3 years, 4 years, right? And you may be quite well prepared to compete in those other calls, and you would still be able to find a host institution and do a really excellent project there, and bring about those results that you want to bring. So I mean, Polonez BIS is a great opportunity, yes. But it's not the only opportunity you have. And it's not always, you know, such a clear-cut decision that, you know, I mean, I'll be the last person to say that if you're recommended for funding for a 4-year Opus grant, okay, I would not be saying, well, don't think about it, resign and go for Polonez. It's not an easy decision. There are lots of different factors that you have to consider. So always think where you are and what you want to accomplish, and just make the decision at best under the circumstances.
Thank you. And with this motivational statement, I think it's an excellent time to finish. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, NCN, for this wonderful presentation and taking the time to answer so many questions. I encourage you all to follow Polonez on social media and reach out if you have any questions directly to the team. And
That's right.
follow also Polonium on social media. And with that, have a good evening, have a good day, and goodbye.
Thank you very much for being here. See you around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.